I know. Now, we're going to look for Mongo. Yeah. You can. I'm suggesting you do it. I don't want everyone to do it because it means I have to come and give my permission whenever it says, do you want to install? So, but it would take so long to install the virtual, and this is our last one. So I think we can work without it for this one. But wait for a minute until I have, I mean, when we're doing things. I wouldn't yet. All right, I guess I'll zoom this. I was just making it bigger. So a couple of things about Mongo, and I'm going to show you that when we get in there. It's a very different kind of database. It is not a relational database. It is not based on tables and keys and foreign keys. It is not even based on SQL. So I haven't gone anywhere yet. It just says Thursday is Thanksgiving is all I have. So, speaking of Thanksgiving, you guys watch the news, like just over 100 people sick from Turkey. I think I did hear that actually. Yeah. So I'm going to do, I'm just going to type in for a search, Mongo. Let's do MongoDB. And it goes to the Mongo database official site. So there's a whole class of databases that are called NoSQL databases. It's not. It's kind of a misnomer because some of them actually do use SQL, but they don't. They're non-structured. They don't have a schema. A schema is what we did when we did our design, right? Where you design what a table is, and you design what the fields are, and you design what the data types are. Mongo is a lot looser than that. NoSQL databases are usually written with JavaScript rather than, and we'll be using what they call JSON for JavaScript. Maybe worked with JavaScript. Yeah. So it's just a very different feel and structure. What they're really good for is gathering a lot of data really fast. They are very good for non-structured data, particularly things like feeds from social media. Right, so if you wanted to gather all of your Facebook data, MongoDB would be good, or Twitter. In fact, most of them actually run off of NoSQL databases. We'll talk about that in a moment. But let's go down to the, so I'm at the Mongo official site, and all I did was in the search bar, type MongoDB, right? Mongo is the most popular of the NoSQL databases. So if you type MongoDB, which I haven't, so when we're here, I'm going to go to downloads. I think I'm still in the search screen, right? So then I go here. We don't want the Cloud Atlas. Let's see if we can figure out. What I want is the community server. And we just need to find, so let's look at, so we don't want cloud. Let's look at server. And there's the community server. The community server is free. That's why we want it. And we want Windows 64-bit. So we'll just do, I don't want it as a zip. So here where it says zip, do MSI. You guys know what MSI, it's a Microsoft installer. If you do it as a zip, then you're going to have to unzip it. I think the installer would still be in the zip file, but let's just do the MSI. What? You guys find it? Everybody? You guys are okay with that? But yeah, we want it inside the what do you mean version? Yeah. Yeah. So then you can just do download and run. Yeah. Sometimes if you kill it, if you exit improperly, it locks it. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. It's weird that you'd have to go and delete the log file, but I found that it works. All right, so let's download. You don't have to register for it, so I'm going to run. You can download it if you prefer to save it and then run it, but the advantages of saving it and then running it are you always have the installer, but it's pretty easy to go back and get it. So this is just good. This is just downloading the installer. As I said, we'll talk about Mongo more when we get it up a little bit. Yeah, you need permission now. Yeah, so you just want to. Yeah. So again, that means you're instead of running it yourself. So just go up. Yeah. Do complete. Yeah, so when you get this up here, let me zoom on this one. I'll zoom it so you can kind of see. We're not going to change much. I'm just going to say next. You have to accept, again, that there are people who are arguing in court that the fact that you have to accept to continue is illegal. But for now, if you don't accept it, won't do it. I'm going to do next. We will do complete. Run as a service, and that's all fine. Just we're going to do it as local. Actually, yeah, let's do it as network service. That's fine. Otherwise, we have to create a user for it. So let's do next, and then we'll just do next, and then we'll do install, and it should pop up asking permission, and you just say yes. So it's going to require a reboot. I'll just say okay. Usually the Mongo installation goes pretty simply. There are a couple of little things I have to show you though, because it won't run right out of the box, weirdly. That's because you're not doing it in the virtual machine. Yeah, go into the virtual machine and do it again. All right, so it is finished. And then I'm going to restart. And then after I restart, I'll show you a couple of other things you have to do. So, yeah. You don't say yes. Don't update. That's the problem with you need a permission for this. It should be okay. Usually once it's up and running, it doesn't require the permissions again. So when you do get back, then log back in.
Yeah, but well, I did it.
Just the website, right? Yeah, somebody had asked about the quizzes and things. You can do those anytime. The idea is to finish them after we finish a section. They're just multiple choice. They're online. They're available for whenever. They allow you, I think, 3 times through, which with only 4 possibilities on any question. They only allow you twice. I think the midterm allows only twice. I think the quizzes, they're just twice? Okay. I meant to do them 3 times. I think the quizzes are 3. Yeah.
Oh, for Python, okay. I'm thinking of the whole different class.
Yeah. These ones might only be 2. I meant to do them as 3. All right, so I'm finally back. I did not. Yeah, that's it. Let me see. And even if I changed it, I couldn't change it. How many have got it installed in our back end? A lot of you are still going. I'm going to wait just a minute. Yeah, I just need to, I'll wait about 2-3 minutes.
How do we get back into it?
You just log back into the virtual machine. I'll show you how to start the other first. It will not start now. If you start it, it'll fail. And also, by default, it doesn't have a GUI. I'm waiting a minute. That's a pretty good picture. They download photos from the stock library of green hats. A lot of them are really quite beautiful. Yeah. Somewhere else. Yeah. What are you trying to? Yeah. Yeah, still password. All right, how many are not ready yet? Everybody's ready? So the thing is, and I don't know why it doesn't do this with the install, we have to create a couple of directories. If we don't create these directories, it won't run. So on this PC, C drive, I need to right-click New Folder, and I'm going to call it Data. So this has to be on C drive. If you don't put it on C drive, which you don't have to do, but it means configuring a lot of config files. So let's just go with the default.
Is that in the machine?
It's in the virtual machine, yes. So you take the.
Do we click on the MongoDB first and then,
You click on what?
Should we click on the MongoDB?
No, don't. No. Ignore the MongoDB for right now. So I'm going to delete this and redo it. All right, so you go to this PC, you go to C drive, you can right click and do new folder. The folder needs to be named data. It actually, on Windows, it doesn't matter if it's capped or not, but in Linux and Mac, I think it needs to be lowercase. So I'm doing it again as lowercase. Inside of data, so I'm going to double click the data folder. I need to create two folders. So I'm going to do a new folder. One is DB. And then I'm going to do a new folder, and one is log. So you have a data folder on C drive, and inside of that, you have DB and log. That's where your data will be. All right. Once we start things and do things, that's where your data will be. And generally, I find it really hard to move these files, but what you generally want to do is, if you want to move something, you move the whole data folder. So local disk C, create a new folder called data, and inside of it create DB and log. Again, I don't know why it doesn't do that in its install. I really don't know why it doesn't, but it doesn't, and it won't run without it. So, I don't know. I don't think it installed any GUI. I'm going to go look and see though. All right. I'm going to do, are you guys ready? So I'm going to right click here, and I want to make a new shortcut. And what we're going to do is we're going to go find the executables for Mongo. It's either that or type the string in every time into the command line. So I'm going to do a right click just in the blue of the desktop, anywhere. New shortcut. So we need the location of this shortcut. And what we're going to do is we're going to browse to it. Have you ever made a shortcut?
Yes.
So, well, you're learning something, right? So I'm going to do browse. We're going to go to this PC. We're going to go to local disk C. We're going to go to program files, and I'll walk through it again. But MongoDB, we want to go to version 44. And we want to go into binary, and we want to get MongoD. MongoD. This is the actual server. So this is the path. C, program files, MongoDB, server 4.0, bin, MongoD, exe. So I will cancel the whole thing and go through it again. I'm going to right click, new, shortcut. I'm going to browse. We want to go to this PC. We want to do local disk C, program files. Not program files 86, just program files. MongoDB. So there's a 4.0 and there's a bin, and it's in the bin. If you're used to Linux at all, bin is for binary files. This was written for Linux, but it works when I find on Windows. Works fine on Macs, although I do not know where the directory structure of Mac is for these files. So. So I'm going to basically just do next, and then I am going to finish. Now that's the server. See, it makes us a nice little thing there. But we also need the client. And the client, this is going to be basically, we're going to do some command line stuff, which if you've never done before, can be frustrating, but it's also a really useful skill. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to do a new shortcut. And I'm going to browse. And it's going to go to exactly the same place, but we're going to choose a different file. This PC, local disk C, program files, MongoDB. It's under MongoDB server 4, and then in binary, but this time instead of MongoDB, we want just Mongo. And I'm going to do OK. And do next. And finish. And it will give me another. There. Now there is a GUI. I just saw the install for it. It's not installed, but I saw the install for it. It's not. Actually, I find the GUI harder to use than the
You said MongoDB by mistake?
No, MongoDB. And then go into MongoDB. Go down into files. And then there you go.
I was fun trying to figure out how to do this thing. Yeah, and then that's what I just like it. I can
Well, so the advantage of doing these, so I'm going to do, I'll show you maybe the GUI in a bit. As I said, I don't really care much for the GUI, but we can use it. So when you do this, when you double click MongoDB, this starts the server. And you need to leave this window open, because when you close this window, the server stops. All right. When I do MongoDB, it gives me some things, and then it gives me a prompt here. And we are actually at the, this is the command line version of the Mongo shell. Can I make the, I'm going to make my fonts bigger. Now, it actually won't, I'm going to exit and then do it again, because it won't show me the bigger fonts until I. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to just say use test, and we're going to make a test database. Notice how it says switch to DB test. That's all you have to do to create a database, is just say you want to use it. It creates the database at that point. you know, there's not a lot. It's an empty database. It has nothing in it, right? But it's a database. So I'm going to, we'll create a collection. A collection is kind of the equivalent of a table, except that it's just a collection of JSON objects. Does that make sense? And I'll talk about what JSON is in a second. So let's, again, all I have to do is, so DB is the current context. I'm going to say, what do we want a collection of? Anybody have a good collection? Something that isn't too hard on my brain. I'm going to say, what? Colors? That's way too easy, though. I need a little bit of complexity. Let's do, what? That's kind of complex, too. Let's do TV shows. TV collection. I don't know why, but I'm doing this from memory, so let's hopefully this works. Show isn't the right thing. What? I'm trying to remember my commands. I'm going to cheat. As I said, my brain is real fuzzy from, so I am going to go to so this is a blog that I sometimes use. Let's do first steps with NoSQL. Use books. Oh, find, not show. All right, so there's nothing there. But it created a collection, an empty collection called find. Right. This is actually, developers really love these NoSQL databases because you don't have to do any long prep. You know how we spent all that time designing the database? Here you can just sort of throw stuff in. Now, that's not necessarily a good idea. But you can just sort of throw things in. So I am going to, so we have I'm going to do insert, actually it's DB TV collection, and this is case sensitive, insert, and I'm going to insert an object here, a JSON object, and we'll talk about that. JSON objects are basically, you know, value pairs. I'm trying to think of that. Key value pairs. Thank you. As I told you, my brain is fuzzy. So we're going to do, let's say if you don't put an ID in, it automatically gives you an ID, but it doesn't use them like keys. You can't use them to relate to other tables. But we'll let it put in an ID. Let's do, anybody have a good TV show? Let's do the name. Fraser? What did you have for the Fraser?
Yeah, Fraser.
I'm not sure if I can remember how to spell.
Yeah.
Z-S-I-E-R. Now, again, you can use you can use single quotes or double quotes. The thing is that it's basically, this is the key. So the name is the key and this is the value. Now, if you're going to make this actually useful, then you would want to make most of the things in the collection resemble each other. But unlike a database table, they don't all have to have the same columns. They don't all have to have the same values structure. You can vary it. So let's do, what else do we want to know about? Like,
Runtime.
we could do runtime. What would you,
30 minutes.
yeah, we could do, I guess, 30 minutes. I might in a minute try to show you the JSON for a Twitter feed. It's like 9 pages long for something that's relatively small. Let's do, this is something you can do here that is utterly illegal. And so who are the actors? Chelsea Grammer. Kelsey. Who else? That's right, yeah. That's probably good enough for now. It does need single quotes, thank you, especially with spaces. You can use the arrow to go back. Editing in the command line is a real pain in the butt. End will take you to the end, and you can put, you need the square brackets. That is, if you've done any kind of programming, that's an array. One of the things you can do in a Mongo database that's forbidden in a relational database is that you can have arrays. Not only can you have arrays, although we're not going to go there much at all, is you can have objects inside of objects, and you can have arrays of objects inside of objects, and you can get this very complicated. And it doesn't, they don't care. There's a lot of things that relational databases were designed to avoid, that people just do willy-nilly in non-relational. A lot of repetition. You know, relational databases were designed to eliminate repetition and redundancy, but there's a lot of redundancy in a non-relational database. They can be fairly sloppy, but again, they're more effective if they're less sloppy. Let's do just a couple more fields. Anybody have another idea? Well, no, I mean, we're still doing TV. We could put a genre. Maybe we'll call that the last one here. And we'll just do comedy, sitcom. All right, so at the end of this, you close the parentheses, and you close the curly braces, and you close the parentheses. I will tell you that the thing that's going to drive you nuts, this is getting into a programming language, because it is, commas, making sure all of your parentheses and curly braces match it, making sure your square things match, making sure that things are quoted properly. It can drive you nuts. So when I'm down here, if I press enter, it worked. And the way I know that it worked is it says that in, meaning the number inserted, is 1. Notice it returns the value even in JSON notation, key. So we're not going to do a lot of this right now, but we will. But I actually want to show you, I think we might go and install the GUI too, so you can see what that looks like. There are GUIs. You can actually go out and get lots of GUIs for this. Most of them cost money. But there's a free one they give you. It's just that it's really awkward and clumsy. In some ways, this is better. So I'm going to do DB TV collection dot find. Find is like star dot star, right? It just returns everything. I'm also going to do pretty. If you don't do pretty, it just writes it across the screen. If you do pretty, it will break it so that it looks kind of like this. And there's the, it shows, it brings back the, what we have. It works without the dot pretty, but yeah.
Where does this JSON file exist then?
So it exists in the DB. Should be. Let's see if there's anything in here now. See how there's all of a sudden a bunch of stuff in here? That being said, the collection, notice that there's a list of the collections just have numbers. They are not readable as plain text. It's really dangerous for a database to be readable as plain text. So everything's binary and encrypted for security reasons. So, but the JSON is stored in this collection. Probably collection 2, I'm guessing. Well, there's 4. I don't understand why there's 4 collections. A couple of these collections may be there's a sample database that comes with it. Which collection this is actually a little bit hard to tell. That's why I said the way to move these is you just basically need to move that whole data folder. Yeah. Yeah, but did you bring it from down here? And then go into the. It worked. I don't see the. I think there's another place where it could go.
Because I have sorry.
I think they did it. In there. Oh, you didn't make it the other time. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I said, those are things that are driving crazy. I have to have a code, but I don't know whether I can get that.
No, but it would.
So let's so All right, so we did, basically, I showed you kind of the gist of this. I mean, basically what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what kind of JSON files we want to put in for a database, right? And we can enter them this way. You can also, let's go, I'm going to go back to the blog here. So this is a book collection. I did another one too. Let's look at this. MongoDB 2. I'm going to just highlight these and copy them. I just want to show you that you don't have to type everything in. And generally what I would do is I'd probably, so I'm going to say use use products. I think this, so we're going to create a database called products. And I'm going to db dot product collection dot find. If you do a find by empty find, it creates the collection. You could also do it with just the insert. db product collection. This isn't part of any assignment. This is just show and tell. Insert. And what I'm going to do, just leave the parentheses there. If I right click, notice how it pastes all that in there. I still have to end that parentheses. Now what this is this is an array of objects that I'm entering, but it will actually enter them each as its own record, as its own JSON. So this is the ID, the product colon, price colon, quantity available colon, right? These are each JSON objects, each one of these. I gave them my own IDs. If you want to, you can give them your own IDs. If not, it'll give you that long, kind of number. So when I do enter here, it tells me that it inserted 10. It also tells me other stuff if you really wanted. Upserted means it changed something that was pre-existing, but it didn't. So
How did you get that? You right click.
I right click. Did you copy from the other? Before you right click and do it, you have to copy. So I was on the blog, and what I did is I copied this.
What's the name of the blog?
The what?
The URL of the blog.
Oh, so this is a Congerbot. It's actually a blog you might be interested in. It has other stuff in it. It's where I basically work on things that I might be using for class eventually. So congerprepblogspot.com, and if you go there, all of the listings are on the side there. And one of them, this is Mongo 2, I think. MongoDB 2. There's Mongo beginning. There's Mongo 3 where I did some stuff. First steps with NoSQL is where it actually begins. But you can, one of the things that I would suggest once we get going, if we use this, so let's go back to, if we use this, then I would suggest writing these in Notepad first, because it's so much easier to edit and troubleshoot it, and then once you've written it in Notepad, copy it over. It just makes it easier to go. I'll do a quick query on this, and then we'll look at the. So notice we have find, and if I do just a find, it will return all of these. If I do db dot product collection dot find, it will just, I did product collect. This is the problem with command line. Okay, so it returns all the ones that I just entered. If I wanted to search for one of them, and these can be really sophisticated, but I'm not going to. These, I'm going to do product collection. And inside the find, I'm going to put an argument. So I am going to say find, which one do we want to do? Let's do, and I'm trying to remember, I think I need a curly brace. Product, which should have quotes, but it doesn't have to. And I'm going to do Android tablet. And then I'll end the curly brace, and I'll end the parentheses. So this is a query where I'm looking for a very specific thing. And notice that that's what it returns. So it returns just the Android tablet. And you can do all sorts of, as I said, fairly sophisticated queries, but they're always done in terms of JSON pairs. It probably helps if you've done JavaScript, but you can learn it pretty well without. One of the reasons why developers love NoSQL, most web developers are JavaScript expert. So it's really natural for them, it's native for them. Oh, so you probably just need to get out of there. You need to get to where So if you wanted to do that, what I did is I changed, you have to go to the blog. So, but we're not going to be using those. So do Conjure Prep. So you want Conjure Prep. Yeah. There should be Conjure Prep. Yeah. And then one I got those from was MongoDB 2. And then I copied here. And then then you do, I made a whole new database, right? So I said use products, and it created a database called products. And then I did DB product collection find, which created a collection called product collection. Then I did an insert where I inserted all of those. And then I did a find, and then I did a query. But we're not going to use these. This is just show and tell. Yeah.
Use creates the table.
Use creates, it doesn't create the table, it actually creates the database. So one of the things when we're doing this, one of the things you don't want to do is say use every time, because what you're doing is you're not creating collections, you're creating new databases. Right? So there's a couple of things. I'm going to go over, I might actually run the PowerPoint just because my brain is mush today. But I also want to see about installing the GUI and see what we have there. So I'm going to do, to exit out of the shell, you can just write the word exit, and it goes away, right? The server I'm going to leave on, although I might need it closed, I don't know. So when I go down here, the reason, when I was in here in Mongo, so let's do program files, MongoDB, server 4.0, binary. I noticed install Compass. Now, I don't know if that'll work or not, but I'm going to try running that. So this is this PC. So local disk C. Actually, let's just program files, MongoDB server 4.0 bin, and I'm going to try to run install Compass. Nope, that's just a text. So where is there a place for Compass? It's a PowerShell script. So would we run that in PowerShell? Run with PowerShell. What does that do? Oh, I know what. Let's not worry about it. We could maybe go to the website. Does it have a Compass? We don't need so docs, learn, blog. Thank you for downloading Mongo. Get Mongo. Wonder what they did. It used to be they automatically downloaded Compass, but it's not there now. As I said, I found it awkward anyway, so maybe we're better off without it.
I found the Compass install under where you go to version, go to the download thing, and install on server, and it's just tools.
Okay. So under,
Where we initially installed the Mongo.
so if I go back,
Yeah, you go back. Yeah, and go to tools where it says server. A little.
oh, tools. Do you guys want, well, let's download it. Just so I'm going to run it. So this was under tools, MongoDB, Compass, and I think this is the free version. I'm looking to make sure this is free. Seems to be. And it doesn't say that you can do it without. Actually, let's try running it without.
There's a community edition on the job kit.
Is there a community edition? Because we do want that. I don't want that. I think that's the database one again. All right, so let's go back. Download. Tools. Compass. And where did you see community platforms?
You drop down on the version.
Oh, so version community edition. And then it should let you download that. because I knew one of the versions you have to pay for. They'll let you try it free for a little while, but you have to pay for it. We can do everything that we need to do without this. I just thought, some of you might not really like typing in JavaScript. There are other free GUIs too, and then there are other paid for. So we've got MongoDB. We've already got it. Let's go out. What? Let's go down. We want Windows. We want All right, so I presume we have to accept the license agreement, and they make us at least scroll through it. And they're telling us things that have been changed. So maybe it's not as horrible as it was. We'll see. All right, so if you should have your the MongoD, the Mongo server still running, because this is like with SQL Server and other things. This is just a client. It's not Mongo. It's just a front end to Mongo. So I'm looking. It has the port. I think that the port and the local host are fine. So I'm going to say connect. It won't connect if that other thing isn't running, but if it is, it will. So notice we have admin. So admin is, and that's where the zero collection is, I think. Admin is where you do things like set up users, set up permissions, do all the security stuff. Config is for configuring it. Local is the default database. And then there's ours with products and test. And if I open up products, it has product collection. And when I click on that, it will show me, the product collection, what's in there. Now the filter up here gives you some ways that you can filter it, or you can do it as just JSON, which I forget how to do. So it'll go and you can insert a document. If I insert a document, it kind of lets you write your JavaScript right here. But I do find, although you can do a lot with this, and it does give you a visual representation, over here you've got two: copy document, clone document, delete document, or edit document. I mean, it's not, it does give you some visuals. You can change it to a table look or a list look. I don't know how it does table when you have embedded objects. Be interesting to look at that. When you buy the copy, you can actually do your queries with SQL. Here, if you do find, it asks you what your filter would be. So like if I do product, and then I think I would have to do, let's do Chromebook. I don't know if this will work or not. I'm much more comfortable in the, so let's see, can I do that? Will it work? Doesn't like that, so it's not what I want yet. Do I need to put curly braces? Yeah, that worked. I mean, when I put in the curly braces, it worked. So this is the GUI. All right. So, I mean, this is just, as I said, show and tell for right now. It's a very, very different kind of database than the relational databases. I'm introducing it in this class just because NoSQL databases are growing in popularity, mostly because they're really good at doing things like capturing social media, right? If you think about a regular table database, you have a very structured table. You have a list of things that are supposed to be there. But in say a Facebook post, you may or may not have a picture or a video. You can have text. You can have a lot of text or a little bit of text. There are lots of different fields that you can have. There's a series of responses, likes, and all those different things. I mean, it's much easier to capture things that can vary depending on every single post with NoSQL database than it is to capture them into strict tables. There are some bad things about NoSQL. Anybody guess a few? It can be chaotic, right? It's entirely up to the developers to keep things making sense. There's nothing in this software that helps it make sense. The keys, it gives you this key, this ID, but you cannot use them to relate. I mean, you could put that key in another table, but you would just have to write a query where you look for that number, right? There's no relational integrity. There's nothing that relates one collection to another, except you in how you determine to structure it. There are other things too. One of the nice things about a NoSQL that's different than a relational database is that storage is done differently. We're not going to do this, but you can do something they call sharding, where you can spread your files across thousands of machines across the internet, right? You can which means that it can store, massive, petabytes of data. because you're not bound by a single machine or a single cluster of machines. Relational databases, the way you make them bigger is you buy a bigger hard drive, right? But with these, you can spread them out across the internet, so they don't have to be. If you need more space, you just add another machine. Yeah.
Could you not put a relational database on the cloud and kind of achieve the same thing?
The relational database, though, the way the files are handled, you still have to have the files together. Now, you can have multiple copies of that file, but the relational structure means that it's basically on a single or a small cluster of disks. It doesn't allow you to, but there's reasons why it doesn't allow you to do the sharding. So there's some disadvantages to being able to spread it across the internet. One of the things is that when you do a query of a NoSQL database that's on the web, that's on the cloud, they do not promise that your answer one time will equal your answer the next time. They don't promise consistency, right? Because the algorithms they have, and this is related to, I'm not going to go into this much because I'm not sure I understand it all, but Hadoop and all these querying algorithms. That Hadoop was developed by Google for query, but it's a way that they organize the data for these. It goes out and it finds as much of the data that's available in the shortest time possible. But it never brings it all back if it's really spread out across the internet. And if it finds a node that's down or something, it just ignores it, right? In a relational database, there's a thing called atomicity, and basically a relational database guarantees that the answer will be the same for every person querying the database at a given point in time, right? The answer will always be the same. The data will be consistent, across all users, across a single user, that every transaction will be isolated from every other transaction. There are all sorts of neat things that a relational database does that protects the integrity of your data. NoSQL does none of that. NoSQL is really good for gathering big data. It's not very good for doing like accounting, right? Because it doesn't have any of those rules built in. So, but it's becoming an increasing part of the database landscape. And typically, companies will be running both NoSQL and SQL databases. And there's a whole nother career path, which we won't get to, but basically where you're trying to integrate the two. Because when you do your data analysis, you need to bring them into some kind of common structure that you can apply statistics to. And that is a major complicated job. But that's, so these are kind of, they're important, and I thought we should spend a little time on them just so you've seen them too. They're part of the database landscape now. They're the only kind of database that has actually somewhat successfully competed with relational databases. So I'm going to bring up Canvas. And I think what I'll do is I'll just real quickly kind of skim through the PowerPoint, and then I will show you the assignment. But as I said, on Wednesday, I'm just assuming that's time for finishing up. If you haven't finished up, you could start working on the Mongo. But, I mean, most people haven't finished up. Or if you have, you haven't turned in your assignments, one of the two. So I'm going to go into Canvas. I might unzoom here, just because that's really gigantic. I'm surprised I made it through without a coffee fit. Let's see. All right. Okay,
There's
is,
a typo.
okay, how bad a typo?
So I kind of answered it based on what I thought it would be, and it was right. I took the quiz this morning and I noticed that.
It is quite possible that there are typos. One of the problems I've had, so one of the things I might do is just give everyone a point for that.
It's the, you have one for what best describes a functional dependency and what best describes a dependency. And for question 6, both option 2 and 3 are the same option.
Oh, okay.
When the answer is 2, which should be one attribute, because it looks like they're layered, 5 and 6 are layered in the same way. I guess answer 2, thinking that's probably the one that's actually supposed to be one.
Yeah,
attribute.
but that's good logic.
And so, yeah, so that's misleading. So that's for the MySQL module quiz.
All right. So if you're doing that, go for the first one, right? Second one.
One for questions.
And if you get it wrong, I'll give it to you anyway. And I will correct it, but it won't let me correct it after somebody's taken it. But unless somebody's taken it, I don't see the typo. So.
It's funny, a lot of us don't see the typo until we take it.
Yeah, I know. I don't see the typos when I post it, and a lot of times I don't see a typo until it's right up here, you know. When I'm projecting it, I look and say, oh God, I typed that wrong. That may be true in this NoSQL. So I went to the modules, and under the NoSQL, there's a NoSQL here. This is it's actually not a PowerPoint, it's a Google Doc or Google Slides. But I'm going to go for present, and let's see if it actually does. Is it going to go? Oh, error. Okay. Maybe we'll do this, maybe we won't. Let me try it again. Probably Microsoft Edge. I wonder if I did it in Chrome, but I don't have Chrome downloaded yet. There it goes. Except that's not the way it's supposed to look. Third try. No, it's screwing up. I have another way to do this, although it won't work for you guys. One of the things you guys can do, you can kind of scroll through these, right, the slides. You can kind of just scroll through them here, which I could do too if you want. The other thing I can do is I could go directly to my Google Drive, which I think I will do. But you guys can kind of follow through on this if you want. And again, it's not super important. Actually, I'm not hooked into my Google Drive here. Do I really want to do that? I know how to do it. My brain is shut. I guess I'll just walk through it the way you guys would. I'll just make it bigger. That's not big enough, though, is it? It's not really changing the slides that much.
You can go upstairs where you have like, NoSQL written, yeah.
Oh, that looks better. That actually went to the right place. That looks better. Okay, thank you. No, that's still screwed up. But it was better. there was a better view of this right here.
So now it's data.
Well, see how NoSQL is in the middle? When I go to the outer, when I go to present, it still screws up. It so if I do present from the beginning, it puts the NoSQL down here instead of up in the green. I mean, it's messing up. And I think
Maybe
if,
go to the next slide and see, right?
yeah, that's okay. So I guess we can do that. See if it works. All right. So I've been talking, a lot of this I've already said, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Basically, NoSQL has been growing in popularity. There's a lot of different forms of them. They can interact with SQL databases, but in general, they have less or no schema. And that means they don't have rows or columns. They don't have columns assigned to a single data type. Records in the same collection can vary in their structure. This is okay in a way. Like if you had a list of, like a TV show, and one of them you listed just one actor, and another one you listed 12, that's fine, right? So that it varies, but it allows, you still have a kind of a resemblance, the structures resemble each other. But if you're missing some data, instead of putting a null in there, you just don't include the field, right? You can change things. They don't enforce relational integrity, and information can be repeated in several places. There are no joins and no enforced keys. One of the disadvantages in its SQL, if you have things in multiple tables, you can join them and bring them back in one set. You can't do that in NoSQL. If you have two things in two tables, you have to do two queries, one for each collection. Does that make sense? It's a little bit different. They tend to be fast. Because they're just text SQL, they can be really fast. They're very flexible, right? That's one of the things that developers and programmers love, is that they're very flexible. When you're working as a programmer with a relational database, you're constantly running up against the relational integrity, the primary key, foreign key, which means you have to enter data in certain order, right? You have to make sure that the primary key exists before you can add a foreign key. Everything has to be done in a certain sequence. The SQL can be fairly unforgiving. So these are a lot more flexible and a lot easier, and a lot of developers prefer it. They can handle massively large files. And they often, again, because you don't have this complex structure, the relational structure with the tables and the relationships, they can often be faster to develop and deploy. Although if you read on the literature, one of the things that's coming around is that the virtues of these, the advantages, are also disadvantages. Developers were too quick to deploy, and now they find out that they made big mistakes. And they're actually working on blends between the relational and the non-relational databases. PostgreSQL, which I will be using for the SQL class, if any of you guys are, it has all the relational structures, and that's what we'll be focusing on if you do the SQL class. But it also has NoSQL elements. It has the ability to take in JSON on the fly and do other things. And I know that Facebook was using a NoSQL database, but they're trying to give it some of the relational integrity features of a relational database because they have problems with things not coming together the way they would like. So they're starting to blend the two a little bit. All right, so they don't enforce relational integrity. That means that you can have a lot of garbage in there if you aren't careful. Because of the way the files are distributed, you can't guarantee the answer to your question will be current or consistent. And ACID is atomicity, which means that every piece of data is isolated from every other piece of data, and every transaction is isolated. Consistency, the idea that it always returns the same data. Isolation, actually, that the data is, each piece of data is isolated from the other, and durability, that it will last, that it persists. Most NoSQL databases say they have eventual consistency, meaning eventually they'll arrive at a consistent result. It's not really good for finances or, again, accounting, that kind of thing. It doesn't matter if you're collecting social media. It doesn't matter if you're absolutely right on the value at that moment.
So would it also not be good for like a scientific database where everything needs to be exactly consistent?
It wouldn't be good if everything needs to be exactly consistent. It might be good if what you're doing is just collecting raw data on the fly. You know what I mean?
But if you're storing like medical history, stuff like that.
Medical histories and things should probably be, actually, that's a big broader. So you have the security is one thing that NoSQL is famously not as secure. I think most of them will be using relational databases, probably something like Oracle or SQL Server. That being said, I think the structure of medical files is so changeable and amorphous that a NoSQL could be good for some of that. Yeah, question or you just? So there are different kinds of NoSQL. Key value pairs and document databases, that's basically what Mongo is sort of used to, incorporated. Column family stores confuse me, so I'm not sure if I can explain that well. Has anybody ever looked into that? We might try to think of another. Graph databases are really neat. They have a little bit more limited functionality than the key value or the document. Column family stores are basically where each column is like its own table or own collection. They said it confuses me. So graph databases, they do things like plot connections. So if you wanted to, like, take some random person from Facebook and plot everybody that they're connected to and everybody who they are connected to create kind of a relationship plot. That's what graph databases do really well. Does that make sense? They are really good at showing matrices, and they do it visually. They actually created, graphs of these kinds of relationships. When you do those, you define what your nodes will be, and then it will look for all the connections between those nodes in the data. As I said, they're pretty neat. They're not useful for everything, but what they're useful for, they're very useful for. And then this is, if you want to go through, there's a link for those. So Mongo is the most popular open source database. It's basically document, also could say that it's key value. And the main interface is the command line, although they're building more. Like we just saw, there's that one we just downloaded, and there's others you can download. Most of them cost money, but most of them also have a free version that is more limited in what it'll do. The ones you pay for are actually really neat. But so then this just talks about MongoDB as the server. And this does a text store. Okay, so this talks about JSON. Mongo, most of them use JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. And this is like what we just did. They have a beginning and ending parentheses. They have keys and values separated by colons. All right. Now, it can be a lot more complex than this. I mean, really a lot more complex. So this is writing what we just did. And then you can do some queries. And there's also other kinds of queries you can do, which we'll spend some time on. I'm just going to go out of that. All right, so that's sort of the overview. And then the very last thing I'll show you, and I think we might call it, see if I can find Oh, I'll also show you the assignment, but let's see if I can find that. That's just, it's not the actual API. Okay. That kind of walks through. I don't know if I can. It goes on and on anyway. This is actually not the whole thing. They're just looking at it. It's about an 8-page thing when you do it, because when you do a Twitter thing, just to show you how non-relational it is, they have your tweet, which is what limited. I think what is the number now? Characters. It's not 125 anymore. It's 200 or 300.
Twitter, 280.
280. And then they have all of your profile information. They also have an array of all the people that retweeted it, and they have a list of all the people that liked it, and they have a list of all the interactions with it, and it ends up being, as I said, gigantic. And it's all in just one big JSON file with a lot of embedded objects. You can write a simple Python script to download if you want to scrape Twitter. It's really easy. Same. I don't know if it's as easy for Facebook. With Twitter, you have to register, and they give you a key. But once you have that key, you can download as many things as you want.
Public?
It is public. Yeah. Basically, what they do is you have to do like a search. They don't just let you download everything that's happening. So you do a search. So if you were to search for, I once searched for science just to see what the science things were. It was a mistake though, because if you went through it, 2/3 of my things were science fiction. I mean, literally, because of science, it looks for the word science, doesn't care what follows after. Although you can do a Twitter query that says science, not fiction.
Can you like filter like retweets by like people's like demographic page and everything?
I think you can because it's in the thing. A lot of people do. A lot of the data that you see on sites like I don't know if 538 gets it from there, but I mean, a lot of the data that you see is from going through Twitter feeds and figuring out who is, because it does have all the demographic information. If you entered it, I don't know. When you register for Twitter, I'm trying to remember.
They don't make you put it there.
They don't
Like
make
Facebook.
you, yeah.
So it will find them out.
Do you feel like businesses like parse their data for statistical reasons? Or
Well, so it depends on what you're doing. So I don't know all of the limits of it. So it's whatever's in the Twitter feed and then whatever is related to the Twitter feed. So I'm not sure you get any deeper statistics than what the user information has. Does that make sense?
yeah, it's cool.
It's mostly like, I mean, if you're doing politics, if you wanted to see how many references to Trump there was on a day, you could do a quick count of that pretty easily. Or you could do business in the sense that you could look for all the mentions of a particular business, which could be useful, right? If you're doing advertising. I know that Facebook allows this kind of data stuff too, but I think that the process of registering for it is a little bit more involved. I know you can scrape Reddit real easily. And what are the other ones out there?
So you think it's just Python?
Yeah, it's just a Python script. it's a fairly simple Python script, and you don't even have to write it if you don't want. You can go find it. Yeah. All right, let's look at the assignment and then call it a day. Excuse me, partially because I'm fading. So I guess that's what it. So I just need to go to where I said NoSQL. Let's go to the assignments, or let's go to the modules again. So the database that we're going to do, because I thought this would be more of a appropriate for a NoSQL database. Let me zoom this. Zooms it, but it also takes it out of window. Why is it doing that? All right. So this is to track like all the music shows that occur in town, in the clubs around town, and basically, at the time I did this, I said there was no place to find that information. I've actually found a couple of spots online where you can do all of this. I don't know what kind of database they use. Could be NoSQL, but it could also be relational. So the database should track all the venues in town where the shows occur. It should track all the shows at each venue. It should show information. The show information should contain the venue, the times, the ticket information, and all the artists at the show. Ideally, it should also contain a description of music and any age restrictions. It would be good if the user could search by venue, by date, by artist, by type of music. And the user should be able to register and get announcements of shows with artists they want to follow. I don't worry about the business rules much, and don't worry about the tasks. I will show you later how to, register users and things like that. So, but you also want to have reviews of shows, and basically they have a rating of 0 to 5, as well as whatever text you want to have. You're welcome to work on this on Wednesday if you want, but just a caveat, I will go over all of this a little bit more starting on Monday, right, where we'll go through and we'll make a sample database in a smaller scale so that you will have more to work with than what you have right now. If you feel like you're ready to go on it, you're welcome to try. But I probably, I will go over it a lot more and give you more to work with starting on Monday. Wednesday, just because it's the day before Thanksgiving, I know you've had lots of time, but I think you spent it doing other stuff. We'll finish up on the MySQL. If you want to start this, I can help you on Wednesday. But it would be good to finish up as much as you can the MySQL stuff, be done with that stuff. And then we'll be free to finish this up. We'll do this. It won't take us that long. This is, as I said, it's fairly rapid development, except that the JSON might be a little bit tricky for a while, but it's not hard. It's just tedious. But so does that sound all right?
And in the meantime, all the quizzes.
Yeah, you can do all the quizzes except maybe the Mongo one, right?
Mongo.
So do them. If you have a question like that, let me know. I can, once somebody has done a quiz, it won't let me change it. Because basically you can understand why, because you'd be changing the, the rules in the mid process. So, but on the other hand, it's a bit of a pain because I do make typos in them and I don't see them. But if you find other typos, let me know too. And if you have questions, if it's only letting you go through twice, if you have questions after the first time, ask me and I'll help you through the second time. All right. Any other questions? All right. My brain is shot. So we'll call that good for today. It's good to see you all again, and we'll have.
Finished your jury duty.
Yeah, I actually didn't do much with the jury duty because I got the flu in the middle of it. So they actually let me go on the second day because they didn't want to get everyone sick. Right.
So I'm hoping to get everything done for that day. Next, by that next
Felt
week.
like
I think that's a possibility, actually.
I'm like most of
In
them.
fact, we'll make sure.
Okay, so is there anything then I should be aware of that last week, or is it gonna be mainly working on the Mongo database?
I think it'll be mostly on the Mongo. I think one of the things I might do in the very last week is it'll be just show and tell. Is the relation, the security stuff. And I'll make a video of it so you can have that.
And so are we gonna have like a test final
No.
coming to any final day, so are we gonna be coming in at all?
You don't have to. I basically use finals week as last yeah.
Okay, that's good to know as well, since I get back the day before finals start. And I'm gonna probably be jet lagged for a couple of days, so.
I'll probably see you.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll remind you again. On
Yeah,
that
do,
day. I
do.
just have to enter my data for the MySQL database. So I'm just, like I said, I was just stuck on trying to have that connection issue with my database, and now I should just be
And
able
like,
to
there's
Yeah.
enter in my data, do my testing.
But it sounds like you
that.
solved that.
Yeah, I solved it this morning.
I mean, I know
before had
Oh,
to leave.
okay.
I spent some
And I've
time this
emailed
morning before leaving for work to, okay,
I
give
told her
it another
sorry.
chance, and I finally found something that worked. So
But
after restarting my computer.